I'm back! Hi everyone, my name is Kristen and this is Kristen is Fully Booked. It has been a while since I have been filming and uploading. I haven't actually uploaded anything since November, the end of November. There is no official reason for why I haven't been uploading. I wasn't intentionally taking a break. It's one of those things that once you kind of lose momentum for, it's really, really hard to get back into it. I was just really tired, really run down in December, and that continued on into January. I wasn't feeling very well. And then, as I said, like once you kind of stop something, it's so much harder to get going again. In fact, for the entire month of March, I kept planning on filming my January and February wrap-up, and that lasted so long that now I'm filming just my Q1 wrap-up to start off the year to get back into it. So I'll start out with some of the DNFs, which I said I have 4 so far for the year. The first of which was The Black Tongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman. I have wanted to read it for quite a while. I think when it first came out, or even before it came out, I liked the sound of it. And then I feel like a lot of the reviews were kind of mixed. I put it back on hold at the library, just decided to go for it, why not? No stakes kind of thing, and it just wasn't for me. It wasn't terrible. I think I probably could have persevered, or I could have pushed through and kept reading it and maybe it would have gotten amazing, but I kind of had a sense pretty early on, like I did not read very much of this, but I just had a sense that this wasn't going to be the right humor match for me. No harm done, I let the hold at the library expire, and I am unlikely to pick that one up ever again. That is the case with this next book, The Binding by Bridget Collins. This is another book that I've had my eye on for quite a while. I've had it saved unscribed and various forms at the library. I think that I originally heard about this on Yolene's channel from Yolene Reads. The main character has some sort of illness happen to him, and he has a little bit of memory loss, and he is taken on as an apprentice to a binder, and there's like some big, huge, crazy reveal. I think it's pretty clear, like very early on, that it has something to do with the binding of this book. In fact, I might have even known that from Yolene, but I don't want to clarify just in case it is a spoiler, so I won't say anything about that. But it just wasn't, it's a case of like, wasn't the right feel for the moment. So this one is more of a soft DNF. Same goes with The Obsidian Tower by Melissa Caruso. This is a book that I'm supposed to be reading to read with Taylor. She got me onto the Tethered Mage series. I know that that's not the name of the series. It's like Sword and Fire or something, which is just really generic, but it's the Tethered Mage series, and we both loved that trilogy. And this is sort of a continuation story within that world, completely different characters, different part of the world, but it's in the same world. And Taylor really, really loved this series. I think that this is technically adult. I could double check, I'll put it up if it's not, but it's one of those adult books that feels a little bit closer to new adult with maybe tones of young adult, and it just wasn't right when I picked it up. I will try it again. It is a book in a series that I would like to read to be able to chat with Taylor about it, but I'm being really, really picky about what I keep reading because I have less time to read. I am not enjoying a ton of stuff, and so I am not pushing through or powering through on things that don't feel right in the moment. But that's a soft DNF, so I'm sorry, Taylor, I still have not yet read that book. Now, this next one is actually like a hard DNF. I'm not going to pick this up again, and that is The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. I read A Part of Your World sometime last year and absolutely loved it. There is another Abby Jimenez book coming out soon. Actually, I think it's coming out in April. It might already be out, called Yours Truly. No?
A few moments later.
Yes, it is. Confirmed. So anyway, that one is coming out very, very soon. But I thought in the meantime, I would go back and check out some of her other books, and I randomly picked up The Friend Zone. And I remembered at the time being like, I feel like I've avoided picking up The Friend Zone in the past for a specific reason of something that I had heard about it. But I could not for the life of me remember why I had never picked that book up. And I think this was on Scribd maybe. And it didn't take me long it didn't take the book long for a couple or for a situation to be hinted at that it immediately triggered my memory of why I had decided that that book was not going to be the book for me, something that it deals with and it has apparently like a pretty controversial epilogue for how it wrapped up that particular element of the story. It is a friends to lovers thing. And at that point too, I was not really liking the main character at all. So I wasn't really liking her. And then on top of that, it was like, oh, right, it's this book that deals with blank and whatever. You can look up, I'm sure that this is a content warning thing that you can find. Now let's get into the books that I actually read. In January, I only read 3 books, first of which was A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This was our book checkout book club pick for the month of January. Yes, that is still happening. I really liked it. You can check out our live where we discuss that if you'd like to see like in-depth thoughts and feelings about this book. It is, you know, very slow. It's episodic and not a lot happens plot-wise. It was exactly the right vibe for me when I picked it up. Really low stakes, just cozy, casual. There's a little bit of exploring humanity that I enjoyed, dissecting various elements of humanity through the eyes of different species who have different ethics and morals and beliefs and tendencies and whatever. So I liked it. I really enjoyed it. I enjoy but don't love with all of my being Becky Chambers books so far. I also read Empress of Salt and Fortune by Niveau. This is an author that I have wanted to try out. It is one of the authors that I mentioned in a video I made last year about authors that I wanted to read more from or begin reading from for the first time. So this was the first Niveau book that I read. It is a novella. It is following, I believe they're described as a monk, like or cleric, sort of, whose task it is to like capture and document things that are happening in this empire. It is sort of a story within a story kind of a thing where they go to this place that's been like opened up for the first time in a really long time. That was the home in exile of the empress who just passed away. And they run into someone who then slowly begins telling them their story and their experience of interacting, of having lived in that place when they were part of the previous empress's entourage, sort of. So it's a story within a story, really beautiful writing. So my first experience with Niveau was really great, but not swept me off my feet, kind of amazing. And finally, I read Night's Shadow in January as well by Sebastian de Castell. This is the second book in the Greatcoats series, and it was one of the books that I was supposed to read by the end of the year in 2022, and obviously that didn't happen. Night's Shadow was good, but it was also very dark. I think everyone always describes this series as like this swashbuckling great time, and it's just so heavy and dark. I get that it is supposed to be this like small group overcoming great odds, like dramatically against them kind of odds, but the villains in this series are just so evil, just dark to the core. There were some elements where we like looked at people who had seemed really evil in the first book and we're like, hey, maybe there's a soft side to them. Maybe they are not a great father, but they really love their son, you know? It didn't quite counteract the damage that they had done in the first book. But overall, like the main villain, the main like person that we're up against is just horrifically villainous in like gross ways, and some really disturbing things and torture scenes to have to read. Yeah, I don't know, like I am enjoying it. I appreciate the way the story is written, and I appreciate the nuances and like the emotional journey that Falkio is going on. I don't like the love interest. I don't like the romance. It 100% does not need to be there at all. It makes no sense. And the villains are just so villainous as to make me uncomfortable with how villainous, evil, and cruel they are. So that's where I'm at with Greatcoats. I will pick up the next book, just not immediately. Then in February, I read 6 books, so twice as many as in January, but 4 of those were from one particular series that I just binged through at a certain point in the month. So I'll talk about those ones in a minute. I'll start with the other 2 books though. The first of which was Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. Yeah. I had this on hold for ages. Basically, when people started to talk about it, I put it on hold, and I was on like a 6-month hold at my library for that. I did read the second one in that series. There's sort of more companion pieces. 10,000 Stitches. Like, I really enjoyed 10,000 Stitches. It was very cute. And it gave, you know, everything that I needed out of that particular story. I just think Have a Soul was better. It's sort of set as if it is a Regency romance, but with fae. And in this book, in the first one, we are following a young girl who, or young woman who as a child lost half of her soul. Half of her soul was stolen from her by a fairy. And so she doesn't experience emotions in the same way that other people do. She also has a little bit more of a challenge picking up social cues and what is expected of her in society. So she makes a lot of blunders, she's very blunt, but she goes to London for the season and she runs into the court sorcerer, who is not a particularly well-liked individual within society, although everyone kind of schmoozes up to him because he's the court sorcier, I think actually is the term that they use. The two of them get close, obviously. It is a romance, but overall I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a very sweet romance. I really liked the connection between the two characters. Actually, no, I'm gonna talk about the 4 books from the series that I was reading because they're also fantasy adjacent, historical fantasy? Unclear. Sarah from Brighton Bookish would be able to define the genre that these books are from, and actually that is where I found out about this series, and that's The Invisible Library by Genevieve Cogman. So I read the first book, which is The Invisible Library, and then I believe the series is called The Invisible Library or something like that. And I then read the remaining 3 books, or no, not the remaining. I then read 3 more books. So overall I read The Invisible Library, The Masked City, The Burning Page, and The Lost Plot. In about a 1.5, maybe 2 week span, I just read all 4 of those books. I think there are 2 more in the series. I think it's a 6-book series overall, but I read them all so close together and so quickly because they were just like so bingeable and easy to read and enjoyable that they were perfect in the moment that I was reading them. But because I read them all so quickly together, they started to get a little bit repetitive. And then after the 4th one, I just thought, no, I need to switch it up and read something else. I will go back and continue finishing the series. I would like to know how it all shakes out. But at the time, it was just like I just needed a bit of a break from it. So in this, we are following a librarian. I'm forgetting the name that she goes by. I feel really bad. It's been a while. We're following a librarian from the Invisible Library. And the whole purpose, it's like this huge library that sort of sits in its own space in like the ether or the universe or whatever. And it is connected through the books that it houses to all, or through some other alternate universes at various points in history and times and whatever, various degrees of technological advancement and magical influence. And the library's purpose is to collect and store and house unique items of literature. Not important to the plot or story, but it's like sometimes the metaphysics of a story and universe is somehow like the defining feature of that you talk about it. But anyway, she goes on a mission. She gets an apprentice in the first book, and she goes on a mission and drama ensues. Something different goes wrong. She begins then to get a little bit of renown within the librarians, as well as earns herself a particular enemy. I thought the series was then going to be, each book is like a cool new mission. We're going to go to a new world. We're going to learn about this new world and all of the various elements, like what's different about this society, what's the technology like, what's the level of magic here, what's the level of fae involvement, or are there dragons, or whatever. But it wasn't like that. At the end of the first book, something happens that then makes the later books not so episodic and mission-y, which is kind of what I wanted. So there is more of a thread, and like I said, like this enemy and whatever, there's more of a thread through them. But the books had a way of ending with like a lot of drama, and you wouldn't ever really get it wrapped up in that you never get to see the fallout of the drama. Like I wanted to see what happens, like the politics of the librarians and her like dressing down for doing something off script or outside of regulations or whatever, and it sort of just like ends where it ends, and I immediately would pick up the next book to be like, what's the fallout of this thing? And it would be months later, and it would just move on to a new, not a new mission, but a new circumstance, one should say. So those endings at first kept me picking up the next book, so I was like, oh, I want to see like the fallout of this drama, and it wouldn't, it would like skip ahead. So that every time it made me pick up the next book, but then it started, by the end of the fourth one, I was just kind of frustrated. But as I said, overall, I really enjoyed it. They were just really fun, lighter, easy to read books in the moment. And then the very last book that I read in February was It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. I put it on hold, you know, at the library, just on the off chance I wanted to read it when it came up. And at this point, I think that was after I read all of those other Invisible Library books, and I thought, yeah, I want something a little bit different right now. So It Ends With Us is one of a few Colleen Hoover books that I have read, and hated most of them. But It Ends With Us kind of has some redeeming features to it in that it raises some interesting conversations. I'm not going to say what it is, it's kind of spoilery, but that was the only one of the Colleen Hoover books that I feel like, even though I don't like her writing, I hate her main characters, I was intrigued by the conversation that was being had. Devastating, for sure. But then when I saw that there was like, oh, we're gonna tell, you know, this story afterwards, I thought, yeah, that might be interesting. I can't say who this story follows because that's spoilers for It Ends With Us. I will say that I enjoyed it overall. I was actually kind of curious how she was going to do this in a way that created tension, but she did. So there's that. I still don't like the characters all that much. I think that there's a fair amount of trauma bonding. Like, is it love or were they trauma bonded? I would be curious to see other people better well-informed on that have that discussion. I would love to listen to that discussion by people who are well-informed on that. So yeah, it was fine. Will I ever pick up another Colleen Hoover book? The odds of that are pretty low. And then March, again, I only read 3 books as well, although I will say that there is one book that I read most of it in March, but I technically finished it in April, so I will finish that, or I'll talk about that book in April. I don't even remember what that book is, like off the top of my head. I just know that there was a book that I was reading well into the end of March and into April, and I decided not to put it down on this list. Couldn't tell you what it is. I have to check my records. But anyway, so the 3 books that I read in March, Love and Other Disasters. I was on a bit of a romance kick by Anita Kelly, and I am sad to say that I did not enjoy this. I'm really sorry, Kristen, from Kristen Graves Books. This was apparently one of her favorite books from last year, I think. I picked it up super randomly. I think Scribd recommended it in a moment when I didn't have anything available at the library. It's a cooking show romance, which is why I assumed that Kristen had read it. And then I saw her talk about it a lot recently on her channel. It's a queer romance between 2 of the contestants on the show. There is the one main character who is just getting out of a divorce, who's just recently divorced. And another character whose name I forget both of their names, who comes out as non-binary publicly, internationally or nationally on the show. And we follow their relationship over the course of the filming of this cooking show. First off, I'll just say that I don't think the title makes any sense or has anything to do with the book in any way. There's like something disastrous that happens at the beginning of the book, but it's not like there's many disasters that happen, so I don't know why they landed on that title. I thought the characters were fine. I enjoyed their relationship up until a point. I don't believe that they didn't have a particular conversation that ahead of time that led to the 3rd act conflict. I just don't buy that never came up before it became an issue. There were some elements to the intimacy scenes that bordered a little bit on like something within the fetish or kink realm. And usually I'm super like pro kink in books. I am pro-kink in books, whether or not I have that particular kink. I appreciate, really, really appreciate when authors show that there is a broad spectrum of interests in what goes on in those scenarios. However, this one is something that is personally off-putting to me. Like, it's like something that I don't know how to talk about this. I don't want it to be spoilery, but there's something that I'm really not into that was included a fair amount in. Actually, there was a couple things that were included that I'm just like not into in like a squeamish kind of a way. So it kind of ruined all of those scenes for me. So yeah, it was fine. I just did not particularly love it. And then that kind of ruined some other stuff for me. So that is Love and Other Disasters. I'm really sorry, Kristen. Another romance that I read in March was The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. I listened to this in the audio, which is on the version of Scribd that I have available to me where I am. And this was really cute. Like, a little bit too cute. I personally think that I would have preferred the main character a slightly less neurotic and over the top, but overall, I really enjoyed it. Now, this is one that Maria from the channel Maria Might Read That put on my TBR, or like caught my attention to it. That's how I heard about this book. And I've had it saved for a while and just was never in the mood. I had heard that it was pretty closed door, and that is just like a little bit of a put off for me for romance. If I'm going to read a romance book, I kind of want some payoff. So this is a friends to lovers fake dating romance following two best friends who have known each other since high school. There's a bit of time like in undergrad university years where they were out of touch, but it is a American football NFL star, male love interest or male lead, and a former ballerina who was in a car accident that then ruined her chances, and now she teaches ballet, owns a ballet studio or a dance studio. She has always been in love with him, like from the moment he tied her shoes at the end of their first run together in high school. But there comes a time always in his relationships where his girlfriends make him choose between them and his female best friend, and he always chooses his best friend. And that's kind of how it starts, is with one of those ultimatums by a girlfriend. And this time, the girl who was very clearly like looking for her 15 minutes or whatever, she's upset, and she posts a bunch of stuff on her Instagram or something about him not being able to perform in certain areas of their relationship. So yeah, I mean, like it goes the way that you think it would go in a friends to lovers fake dating situation. It is very closed door, to the extent that I think that they didn't use the word at all. It was really, really cute. Very, very mutual pining here. If you like that, if that is a big thing for you, I would check this out anyway, even though it is really closed door. If you're not into closed door, give it a go anyway. It's very cute. But yeah, no, I think that this was really, really great. The one thing though is that the main female lead is just like a little bit too, what's the word? I guess neurotic, but it's like not quite neurotic. It's where they're like, where she like says like multiple really, really quick things and tries to change the subject so many times when something awkward comes up, and just has like those like spiral of like, ah, I'm so weird and quirky kind of things. I'm not doing it justice. And the audio narrator really played into that. So I think on one hand, I enjoyed the audio. I think the audio was good. Small asterisk, I'll get back to. But that it built up that quirky, neurotic, I'm not using the right word, but you know what I mean, where they're just like blah 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 blah, like words when stuff comes up. I don't know if this makes any sense. It's clearly been a while since I've had to articulate my thoughts about books. So I think that I could have toned that down a little bit in the way that my internal narrator would have narrated this book for me, like how I would have said it in my head for those characters. However, like, the dialogue is the dialogue, so to some extent it just would have been what it was. I just think I could have tamped it down a little bit, and the audio narrator like leaned into it. Now the small little asterisk here is that there is a male narrator for the guys chapters, and my issue with this is that I think women narrators do such a better job of narrating a man's perspective than the reverse, which almost always leads to then, if you have a dual perspective romance book, which I generally prefer, if it's the audio, it's almost always ruined by the fact that in the guy's chapters, it's this guy trying to put on a squeaky feminine voice, and it just kills it for me a little bit. So that would be the only asterisk there. It's really prominent in some books. I really, really hated it in, is it Mia Sosa's The Wedding Planner or whatever that one was? I'll pop it up. Because there's also an accent involved, and it was really, really poorly done. Otherwise, I love that book though. But just an example of like, I generally don't like it when the male narrator has to narrate a woman's voice. It doesn't go well. Anyway, that was that. That was the cheat sheet. Really cute, really cute. And then the very final thing, which I think was earlier on that I read in March as well, was When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain, also by Nevo. This is the second in the novella series. That's the same as the Empress of Salt and Fortune. So I enjoyed this one as well. It's another like story within a story. And in this case, our cleric main character, whose name I forget, I don't think I mentioned a single name in this video. Anyway, our cleric main character is on their way somewhere, and they, as well as their guide, are trapped on this mountain by some tigers who can shapeshift into women. And the cleric is trying to get out of this, and they somehow wind up mentioning a very famous tiger. So the tigers are then like, whoa, 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 what story do you have? The cleric then goes on to tell the version of the story that they know. And as we go through that, then every now and then the tigers correct her, and they tell that particular part of the story the way that it's told from their, like in their culture, in their history. I enjoyed the story. I liked that it was one of those stories where, depending on which side you're on, different parts of the story is told differently. And according to bias, according to fear. I don't think that Nevo's writing is quite as beautiful as I feel I was led to believe, or at least I haven't been reading it in such a way where I'm like awed by the beautiful, eloquent, flowery writing. But I am enjoying these novellas. So there's one more, Into the Riverlands, I believe. I'm not sure if that is the last for good or if it's just the next one that's out right now. So I'll be checking that out soon. I think Scribd only has the audiobook currently, so I'll have to double check that and just get to it when I get to it. I think I would prefer to read the ebook, but I haven't listened to one of the audiobooks, so maybe it would be better in that format for me. We'll see. Anyway, that is it. Those are all of the books that I have read to date this year, and I promise to take better notes from here on out and have more in-depth, eloquent thoughts. Maybe not promise, but I really hope that that is the case for here on out. I just wanted to be able to get through these first 3 months, tell you whatever, catch you all up on where we are at reading wise, and hopefully this is the beginning of some more consistency on the channel. One video minimum a week, and as well I'm also working on a reading vlog for you. I would like to do some more reading vlogs because I really enjoyed making those back in November when I was doing them for Ramathon. So that is where we are. What have you been up to? Has it been a good first quarter of the year for you reading wise? And do you have any reading goals, or like me, are you just embracing reading whatever you want whenever you want this year? Let me know what you are up to, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.